好，去到2013年嘅第10條題目就係寫文啦。今次寫文嘅主題咧就係蛋白質。咁啊題目就話啦，蛋白質咧喺我哋身體入面可以做到好多唔同嘅功能噶，而佢嘅功能性角色咧係同蛋白質自己嘅形狀咧嘅關係非常之密切嘅。而題目咧就分咗兩部分，第一部分要我哋描述翻一個蛋白質佢係點樣去擁有唔同嘅形狀。而第二部分就要我哋解釋下呢個蛋白質唔同嘅形狀係如何令到佢可以做到唔同類型嘅功能嘅。咁而家啦，又根據翻寫文嘅3部曲咯。第一部曲思考時間，喺成條題目入面，我哋有啲 keywords 我哋係要間低嘅，蛋白質啦、功能性角色啦同埋形狀。然後就去到 precaution 啦，有啲咩嘢我哋係要寫，有啲咩嘢我哋係唔使寫呢？蛋白質喺我哋身體入面其實係有2個角色，一個係功能性角色，另一個係結構性嘅角色。但係今次嘅題目就淨係問功能性嘅角色，亦即係話啦，結構性嘅角色係唔需要講。咁蛋白質有啲咩嘅結構性嘅角色呢？例如我哋肌肉啦、骨頭啦、細胞膜啦，呢啲都係結構嘅角色嚟嘅。然後啦就要去到蛋白質嘅形狀咯。咁我哋就要探討下蛋白質有唔同嘅結構層次係點樣所造成噶啦。蛋白質係用乜嘢嘅基本單位所組成噶啦？咁自不然你要記得氨基酸啊。氨基酸嘅次序又同佢嘅形狀又有冇關係呢？而到第3啦，就係答題鷹架啦。我哋有咩辦法可以將我哋嘅概念能夠有邏輯地、有次序地去表達到出嚟呢？其實你所需要嘅鷹架題目已經俾咗你噶啦，你只需要能夠描述得到一個蛋白質係如何去擁有唔同嘅形狀，然後再解釋翻呢個蛋白質唔同嘅形狀係同佢嘅功能有乜嘢嘅關係，就已經足夠啦。咁經過咗呢3部曲之後呢，大家就快啲 download 翻份筆記啦，我哋咧就開始一齊去做一條題目咯噃。好，咁當大家 download 緊份筆記嘅時候咧，咁我都提翻大家啦。Essay 咧有4大類型，第一類比較，第二類描述，第3類解釋，而第4類咧就有關於日常生活嘅。今次啦就係描述同埋解釋嘅結合啦。第一段嘅答題鷹架咧就係解決第1條問題啦，就係描述下蛋白質係點樣擁有唔同嘅形狀嘅。第一，你要知道啦，蛋白質嘅基本單位就係氨基酸。咁呢個當中咧，梁 Sir 都想提翻大家，氨基酸嘅結合砌成一條嘅蛋白質咧，係透過縮合反應 condensation， 係透過將2粒嘅氨基酸分子，佢哋掹走一個水，而將兩者黐埋一齊，就形成咗一個多態 polypeptide。咁當然之前就會有一個雙態大 peptide 嘅情況啦。然後啦，我哋就要繼續描述一下，咁我哋點樣去製造唔同類型嘅蛋白質呢？就係透過去改變翻氨基酸嘅次序啦、數量啦同埋種類嘅。第3部分呢，我哋就要描述一下，我哋係如何去決定得到一個蛋白質嘅分子入面佢嘅氨基酸嘅次序啦、數量啦同埋種類嘅。就係透過我哋基因入面嘅 base sequence， 即係嗰啲 ATGC。即係到第4部分，我哋就要描述翻一個蛋白質究竟佢有邊幾款嘅結構程度呢？其實就係透過去接曲我哋嘅多態鏈，就令到我哋嘅蛋白質咧就由一個直線嘅狀態變成一個螺旋形嘅狀態，再變成一個立體嘅結構，再經過唔同類型嘅蛋白質互相結合，就形成一啲有功能性嘅蛋白質啦。咁梁 Sir 你之前都拍咗段片，就專係講蛋白質嘅，究竟佢係點樣去組成噶啦？點樣去運用20種嘅氨基酸去創造無限款嘅蛋白質啦？而唔同嘅蛋白質究竟佢哋個形狀啊、結構啊係可以點樣變化呢？咁大家未睇嘅話咧，快啲去睇翻啦。而題目嘅第2段呢，我哋就要去解釋下一個蛋白質嘅獨特形狀、獨特結構係點樣容許到佢去擔當唔同類型嘅功能性角色呢？咁所以呢度呢，你就需要去講一講究竟蛋白質有咩嘅功能性角色，同埋同佢個形狀有啲咩嘅關係啦。第一樣就係酶啦，咁酶我哋都知道佢有活性位置，而佢呢個活性位置嘅形狀呢，就同成嚿蛋白質嘅形狀就好大關係啦。因為呢個活性位置就能夠同一個特定嘅受質去結合，成為一個酶同埋受質嘅複合體啦。而到第2啦，就係作為一個接收器。一個蛋白質佢有唔同嘅形狀嘅時候，佢就可以接收到神經傳導體啦，同埋荷爾蒙啦。因為我哋都學過，荷爾蒙係經過血行運全身嘅， 咁佢點樣能夠揾得翻佢特定嘅標靶器官呢？例如啦，我哋嘅胰島素佢係點樣去揾到我哋嘅肝細胞呢？原來就係透過細胞表面嘅接收器，而接收器嘅形狀正就係建基於蛋白質嘅不同形狀啦。第三，抗體啦，一個抗體呢，佢都有一個特定嘅位置，就係要認翻特定嘅抗原嘅，而呢個特定嘅位置，佢嘅形狀亦都係建基於蛋白質嘅不同形狀嘅。而呢一樣嘢就能夠解釋俾我哋聽，點解我哋有一個特異性嘅身體防衛啦。而最後啦就係血紅蛋白啦。原來血紅蛋白咧係由4嚿嘅蛋白質分子去結合而成嘅。呢啲蛋白質嘅形狀咧就決定得到一個血紅蛋白能唔能夠有效咁樣去運送氧氣啦。嚟到一點出發啦，今次呢條 essay 咧就係問蛋白質。雖然佢冇問你太多有關於蛋白質嘅製造嘅方法，唔排除之後就會問翻你有關於 transcription 同埋 translation 轉錄轉譯嘅過程。呢兩者嘅過程有啲咩嘅比較呢？佢哋本身係製造咗啲乜嘢出嚟啦？佢哋喺邊度發生啦？你需要用到啲咩嘅原材料啦？當中有啲咩嘅酶牽涉喺其中啦。當我哋要去講製造蛋白質嘅時候，不得不講嘅就係遺傳密碼 genetic code。咁當中我哋由呢個去氧核糖核酸 DNA， 再喺一橛橛嘅基因抽取咗出嚟之後啦，究竟點樣去控制個蛋白質嘅製造嘅咧？咁樣控制翻我哋用邊款嘅氨基酸啊，用幾多粒啊，排嘅次序係如何咧？就係透過我哋嘅密碼子同埋反密碼子嘅一個配對啦。另一個導向就係問翻蛋白質嘅角色。蛋白質有兩個角色，一個係結構嘅角色，一個係功能嘅角色。今次嘅題目咧，主要問功能嘅角色，但都唔好忘記佢有結構上面嘅角色，例如我哋嘅骨頭啦、肌肉啦，或者我哋嘅細胞膜。而有關於功能嘅角色咧，我想講多少少嘅就係有關於酶啦。關於酶咧，佢就可以問下你有咩因素係會影響酶嘅活性啦、溫度啦、酸鹼值啦，究竟點樣影響咗嗰個酶嘅活性位置嘅形狀咧？所以歸結翻條題目，原來啦一個蛋白質嘅功能咧係的確同佢嘅形狀係有關係嘅。213 question 10 It is the essay question and the main theme is protein. Protein serve different functions in our body and their functional role is closely related to their conformation, which is the shape. So in this question there are two parts. For the first part, we need to describe how protein molecules can have different conformations. And for the second part, we need to explain how the different conformations enable the protein to carry out different functions. So let's go through the 3 steps to understand how can we answer the question. First of all, thinking time. So we need to highlight the keywords proteins, functional role, and the conformation. And then we need to have the precaution, anything we need to write and anything we do not need to write. There are 2 roles of protein in our body. One is the functional role and the other one is the structural role. However, the question just asks us to talk about the functional role. So that's why we do not need to talk about the structural role. For example, for the protein, it can be used to build up the muscles, build up the bones, and for the cell membrane. And for the conformation of the protein, we need to talk about various structural level of the protein. What is the building blocks and the basic units of the protein molecules? Of course, you need to recall the amino acid. So how can we determine the amino acid sequence in the protein molecules? We also need to mention it. And for the third one is the scaffolding. How can we present our ideas logically and clearly? Actually, we just simply follow the questions is okay. For the first part, we just describe how protein molecules can have different conformation. We need to talk about the whole story about the protein synthesis. And for the second one, we need to explain how is the protein molecules conformation related to the different functions. And for the second part, we need to give some example of the functional protein molecules. So after we talk about these 3 steps, so let's download the essay writing worksheet in the description or the comment section. When you are downloading the essay writing worksheet, I would like to recall the question type of the essay. First type is the comparison, second type description, third type explanation, the fourth type is the daily life situation. So in this question is the combination of description and explanation. Very clear. One question and then the other question. So for the scaffolding, for the first half, we talk about the description. Describe how protein molecules can have different conformation. First of all, you need to recall what is the basic unit of the protein molecules? Of course, it is amino acid. And when we are talking about the building blocks of the protein molecules, I would like to recall the concept of condensation. We remove the water from the amino acid molecules and then join them together. So that's why we can use the amino acid to build a dipeptide and then the polypeptide. Secondly, we need to describe how do we produce various types of protein molecules. And the concept is talking about changing the sequence, number, and types of amino acid molecules. So at least you need to recall that there are 20 types of amino acid. So how can we arrange them in a specific order sequence to make different types of protein? And how do we determine the sequence, number, types of amino acid in the protein molecules? Surely, it's determined by the base sequence of a gene on DNA. And for the fourth step, we need to recall different structural levels of the protein molecules. We need to recall the concept about folding of the polypeptide chains lead to specific conformation of protein molecules. So for the first level, there is a linear structure of the protein molecules, and then we have the helical, and then we have the three-dimensional shape. Finally, several protein molecules bind together to form a functional protein molecules. So in the past, Mr. Leung has already made a video about the protein molecules. If you find that you are not that familiar with the protein molecules, so watch it as soon as possible to get some idea. And for the second half of the essay, we need to explain how the unique shape of the protein molecules allow different proteins to carry out different functional roles in the body. So that's why we need some example of the functional proteins. And we know that there are active sites in the protein molecules. And for the active site, it can bind with specific substrate to form the enzyme substrate complex. So we need to know that the unique shape of the protein molecules to catalyze the specific biochemical reactions. And for the second one, we have the receptors on the cell surface. So the unique binding site of the protein, it allows it to receive the neurotransmitter and also the hormone. So we have already learned it in the synapse concept and the hormonal coordination concept. For example, the insulin, this hormone is secreted by the pancreas. They are released to the bloodstream and then it will go through the whole body. But how can the insulin find the target organs? So it depends on the receptor on the cell surface of the liver cells. And for the third one is the antibodies. So for the unique binding site for the antigen recognition, it allows the antibodies to carry out the specific body defense. And for the fourth one, we have the hemoglobin. These four protein molecules, they bind together to form the hemoglobin to provide the binding site for carrying oxygen to our different body parts. Let's talk about the curriculum mapping in the essay question. It starts from the concept of protein. Although this question doesn't ask you that much about the protein synthesis, next time it may ask you about the transcription and translation. So you need to compare these two processes. For example, what's the raw material for transcription and for translation? What's the products of these two processes? Where do they take place? Any enzyme are involved in this process. For those concepts, you need to do revision. And when we are talking about the protein synthesis, surely we need to talk about the genetic code. From the DNA, and then we see the section of DNA, which is the gene. How can it control the amino acid sequence? Which type of amino acid we use to produce the protein? It's determined by the base sequence in the DNA, and also the RNA. So we need to recall the concept of the codon and the anticodon. Talk about the translation process. And in this question, it asks about the role of the protein. Actually, there are two roles of the protein. One is the functional role in this question, and the other one is the structural roles. For example, the bones and muscles, and also the cell membrane. We'd like to talk about the functional roles a bit more. For example, the enzymes. So we need to recall any factor it will affect the activity of the enzyme. For example, temperature and the pH. How can it affect the shape of the active site in the enzyme molecules? Recall the key message of this essay question. The functions of the protein is related to the conformation of the protein molecules.